the moment I've been waiting for all year. Hi everybody, I'm Mrs. Brown. So the last time that we were reading, we got to meet Grendel. Obviously, he was the one who goes and attacks and has been killing all the people of Harrod for a really long time. But last time we got to meet Beowulf, and he's super exciting and just like the best hero ever. He's like all of the Marvel heroes wrapped up into one, and even better. Yeah, I went there. Beowulf is planning to go and have a fair fight. Now, this is very important because he's like, you know, I gotta be a hero. I gotta be like the best guy ever, because a fair fight is the right way to do this, to do battle. This is like my favorite part, I kid you not. The battle with Grendel. After the banquet, Hrothgar and his followers leave Harrod, and Beowulf and his warriors remain to spend the night. Beowulf reiterates his intent to fight Grendel without a sword, and while his followers sleep, lies waiting, eager for Grendel to appear. Like, I feel like I need music in the background for this. Out from the marsh, from the foot of misty hills and bogs, bearing God's hatred, Grendel came, hoping to kill anyone he could trap on this trip to High Harrod. Okay, there are so many literary terms in use right there. So check out the use of the commas in the first part to show like where the orators would pause for breath. So instead of out from the marsh, from the foot of misty hills and bogs, bearing God's hatred, Grendel came hoping to kill anyone he could trap in this trip to High Harrod. No, instead, this is where the monks were like super awesome. And this is known as a caesura, okay? So like the word say and then sure, weird things, that's how I remember them. So it completely changes the tone of how things are read. And you want to go and like add in those pauses. And that's something like if you're ever having to go and do a speech, especially when you're nervous, and I don't know about y'all, but I get super nervous when I have to do speeches, and so I start to talk really fast. So if I'm reading something like a script, I'll go and put in commas or like big separations, like just press the tab button or something. So in that way I force myself to breathe and to add emphasis. And that's really what a caesura does. So instead of it being so just all together, it becomes out from the marsh, from the foot of misty hills and bogs, bearing God's hatred, Grendel came. I mean, it's almost like, you know how like in movie previews that they're just so over the top and they have those big pauses? That's kind of what a caesura is to me. It's so cool. I love it. It is so powerful. So we also have a lot of alliteration within this story, but I wanted to point out with High Harrod. So that's where we have alliteration. Alliteration is where you have two words that start with the same consonant. So if it's the same vowel sounds, that's assonance, but we're looking at alliteration here today. So look for, as we're reading, look for other examples within this passage. There's also a lot of great imagery here, and it paints that mental image of where Grendel lives. And it's just, that's why I like this picture so much, because it's just so cool looking, and it vibes. It really does. He moved quickly through the cloudy night, up from his swampland, sliding silently toward that gold shining hall. So again, we have another alliteration there with the sliding silently, and it just is really, really cool sounding, almost giving you like that snake-like movement. So maybe he looks a little bit like a snake too. I don't know. He had visited Hrothgar's home before, knew the way, but never, before nor after that night, found Harrod defended so firmly, his reception so harsh. He journeyed forever joyless straight to that door, then snapped it open, tore its iron fasteners with a touch, and rushed angrily over the threshold. He strode quickly across the inlaid floor, snarling and fierce. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, burned with a gruesome light. Okay, after so many years, like, Grendel doesn't need to be so angry. He can really just, like, chill. If you remember the first time that Grendel came to Harrod, he was, like, super stealthy. And it seems as if Grendel's a lot louder now, but he's still quiet enough to not disturb Beowulf's men. So that's kind of good. Then he stopped, seeing the hall crowded with sleeping warriors, stuffed with rows of young soldiers resting together. And his heart laughed. He relished the sight, intended to tear the life from those bodies by morning. The monster's mind was hot with the thought of food and the feasting his belly would soon know. But fate that night intended Grendel to gnaw the broken bones of his last human supper. Human eyes were watching his evil steps, waiting to see his swift, hard claws. Now, this part really reiterates why it's so important with the power of language and speech. It's just such a cool story right there, you guys, and it's amazing. Now, where it says his heart laughed, can a heart laugh? No. But this is going to be personification, so that's where you go and give human attributes to something that is not human. You know, it's a part of a human, but it's not. Well, or is he human? Grendel he's hangry. I don't know about you guys, but I get hangry too, and he's just like, give me the food. I'm so excited. I don't know why he's so angry though, because like, wouldn't he be happy that people are inside? I don't know. Regardless, he's hangry, he's having a moment, and we have some more alliteration where it's the monster's mind was hot with the thought of food and the feasting his belly would soon know. I love that part. So this is going to be one of the last parts of the rising action, and there's some really cool foreshadowing that Grendel might not make it past tonight. So when it says, when human, where does it say that? I'm totally drawing. Oh, there it is. Human eyes were watching his evil steps, waiting to see his swift, hard claws. Who's the he? Beowulf, right? Yeah, obviously. And why is he waiting to see Grendel's claws? What's the purpose behind that? That's going to be really important for this next part. Grendel snatched at the first gate he came to, ripped him apart, cut his body to bits with powerful jaws, drank the blood from his veins, and bolted him down, hands and feet. Death and Grendel's great teeth came together, snapping life shut. That's gross. I'm sorry, but that's revolting. So it's reiterated there that he is large enough to go and rip apart a person, and then to go and like pretty much rip off their head. And I don't know, I always kind of picture like a Pez dispenser and like popping the top off, and then like him going and drinking the poor guy's blood. And then he eats them. It's so gross. So he has to be big enough to go and eat a human and not like leave anything behind. Gross. Then he stepped to another still body, clutched at Beowulf with his claws, grasped at a strong-hearted wakeful sleeper, and was instantly seized himself, claws bent back as Beowulf leaned up on one arm. So sadly, yes, one of Beowulf's men did die, but it was so Beowulf could go and watch how Grendel works. So Grendel is going and he's all feasted on one of Beowulf's men, one of the 14, and Beowulf is doing some recon right now. And the second warrior that Grendel grabs is Beowulf. So this is the climax of the story. So Grendel made an uh-oh because he's messing with the wrong guy. He's messing with my book boyfriend here. Now, I just love this description because Beowulf is like sleeping, so he's, snoozing, pretending to snooze. And he just like leans up on one arm. So he just props himself up on the side and he's grabbing onto Grendel's claws and not letting go. So watch to see if Beowulf ever does let go for the remainder of the fight. Because I'm asking this, you can guess. Probably the answer is no. And the answer is you are correct. But Hygelac's follower remembered his final boast and standing erect, stopped the monster's flight, fastened those claws in his fist till they cracked, clutched Grendel closer. The infamous killer fought for his freedom, wanting no flesh but retreat, desiring nothing but escape. Oh yeah, now you want to escape, boy? His claws had been caught. He was trapped. That trip to Heorot was a miserable journey for the writhing monster. I'm sorry, Grendel. I do not feel sorry for you, sir. So Beowulf is still holding on as he stands up and he is breaking Grendel's claws. So again, he's not letting go. He's kind of like, Rose and Jack on the Titanic of never let go, Jack. I'll never let go. Too soon? If you haven't seen the movie yet, I'm sorry, but it's been way before you were born, so go watch it. She lets go, by the way. So Beowulf, unlike Rose, will not let Grendel go. And now we're in the falling action. So this is where everything becomes like really, really fast and it becomes super interesting too. So just watch and wait. It's so exciting. The high hall rang, its roof boards swayed, and the Danes shook with terror. Down the aisles the battle swept, angry and wild. Heorot trembled, wonderfully built to withstand the blows, the struggling great bodies beating at its beautiful walls. Shaped and fastened with iron inside and out, artfully worked, the building stood firm. Its benches rattled, fell to the floor, gold-covered boards grating as Grendel and Beowulf battled across them. Hrothgar's wise men had fashioned Heorot to stand forever. Only fire they had planned could shatter what such skill had put together, swallow in hot flames such splendor of ivory and iron and wood. Suddenly, the sounds changed. The Danes started in new terror, cowering in their beds as the terrible screams of the Almighty's enemies sang in the darkness, the horrible shrieks of pain and defeat, the tears torn out of Grendel's taut throat, Hell's captive caught in the arms of him who of all men on earth was the strongest. So the point of view shifts as Beowulf and Grendel battle. It's now telling the story from the point of the Danes, who are, remember, the people of Heorot. They can't see what's going on because they're not in the hall, because remember that Beowulf had asked that they not be in there. That way he and his men could go and fight Grendel with a fair battle. So they could only hear the battle noises, and it is terrifying. Just absolutely terrifying. That mighty protector of men meant to hold the monster till its life leaped out, knowing the fiend was no use to anyone in Denmark. All of Beowulf's band had jumped from their beds, ancestral swords raised and ready, determined to protect their prince if they could. Their courage was great, but all wasted. They could hack at Grendel from every side, trying to open a path for his evil soul, but their points could not hurt him. The sharpest and hardest iron could not scratch at his skin, for that sin-stained demon had bewitched all men's weapons, laid spells that blunted every mortal man's blade. And here, you guys, we finally figure out why no one has ever been able to defeat Grendel, because they didn't use a fair fight. Beowulf may, yes, be the strongest in all of the land, but he's the first one to go and actually have a fair fight where it's hand-to-hand combat. So Beowulf's men do try to help, but they can't because Grendel cast that spell on them. Or not on them, but on all weaponry. What do you think the deeper meaning is here? Especially, I'm not talking about a physical fight, even though this is definitely a physical fight. But what is the author trying to say about just general battles within life? It's very important to think about. And yet his time had come. His days were over, his death near. Down to hell he would go, swept groaning and helpless to the waiting hands of still worse fiends. Now he discovered, once the afflicter of men, tormentor of their days, what it meant to feud with Almighty God. Grendel saw that his strength was deserting him. His claws bound fast, Hygelac's brave follower tearing at his hands. The monster's hatred rose higher, but his power had gone. He twisted in pain, and the bleeding sinews deep in his shoulder snapped. Muscle and bone split and broke. The battle was over. So Beowulf still hasn't let go. Grendel is so desperate to escape that he twists until his shoulder snaps off, and then Beowulf rips off Grendel's arm. That is the resolution of the story. The battle was over. Beowulf had been granted new glory. Grendel escaped, but wounded as he was, could flee to his den, his miserable hole at the bottom of the marsh, only to die, to wait for the end of all his days. After that bloody combat, the Danes laughed with delight. He who had come to them from across the sea, bold and strong-minded, had driven affliction off, purged Herod clean. He was happy now with that night's fierce work. The Danes had been served as he'd boasted he'd served them. Beowulf, a prince of the Gates, had killed Grendel, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering forced on Hrothgar's helpless people by a bloodthirsty fiend. How noble and so low-key of him to just be like, yes, I did defeat the monster, and I am pleased. I am happy. I just love that. It's just so low-key. He was happy now. So this part is the denouement, which is the after of how are people and everybody impacted after the resolution. So now Beowulf's pleased with himself. The Danes are laughing, and they're all just like, oh, hey, look at that. That's so exciting. Look at this. Yay. And it's like, dudes, you weren't even there. You were cowering in your beds. But hey, we're happy that you're happy. No Dane doubted the victory, for the proof, hanging high from the rafters where Beowulf had hung it, was the monster's arm, claw and shoulder and all. Okay, so obviously they are excited, and they should be. Grendel terrorized them for a really long time. But that's really kind of gross to go and hang up Grendel's arm in the hall. And they're just hanging it on up. You know, it'd be like if I go and hung up something right behind me in my room here, and would just be like, oh, you want to know a little bit more about that? I'd be so happy to tell you. It's someone's arm that was ripped off. And then in the morning, crowds surrounded Herod, warriors coming to that hall from faraway lands, princes and leaders of men hurrying to behold the monster's great staggering tracks. They gaped with no sense of sorrow, felt no regret for his suffering, went tracing his bloody footprints, his beaten and lonely flight, to the edge of the lake where he dragged his corpse-like way, doomed and already weary of his vanishing life. Alright, I do feel a little bit bad for Grendel here. He's gonna die all alone. Poor guy. I mean, yes, he deserved it because he was bad, or he made bad choices. But I still feel bad. The water was bloody, steaming and boiling in horrible pounding waves. Heat sucked from his magic veins. But the swirling surf had covered his death, hidden deep in murky darkness his miserable end as hell opened to receive him. Whew. So that's some imagery. So we now learn that Grendel lives not only down in the marsh, but down in a lake, and the lake is now bloody from his blood loss, and it's just swirling, and it's just so vivid. Oh, gross. I love it. Yeah, it's great. Then old and young rejoiced. turned back from that happy pilgrimage, mounted their hard-hooved horses. Oh, no more alliteration. Hey. High-spirited stallions, and rode them slowly toward Herdigen, retelling Beowulf's bravery as they jogged along. And over they swore that nowhere on earth or under the spreading sky or between the seas, neither south nor north, was there a warrior worthier to rule over men. But no one meant Beowulf's praise to belittle Hrothgar, their kind and gracious king. And sometimes, when the path ran straight and clear, they would let their horses race, red and brown and pale yellow backs streaming down the road. And sometimes, a proud old soldier who had heard songs of the ancient heroes and could sing them all through, story after story, would weave a net of words for Beowulf's victory, tying the knot of his verses smoothly, swiftly into place with a poet's quick skill, singing his new song aloud while he shaped it, and the old songs as well. And so that is the end of Beowulf and Grendel. Now, this is not the end of the entire story. It is, think about like with like the Avengers and all of that world. There were so many different movies. Same type of thing. There's going to be all kinds of different stories with Beowulf. And next time, we are going to be going into the second story of Beowulf. So like Beowulf 2, the sequel, Grendel's mother. Yep, y'all, we get to meet Grendel's mama. Because ain't nobody happy when a mama's not happy. Just saying. She is going to come get him. So we'll see you next time. Bye.